Okay, we got a guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll take your phone calls in our second segment at 844-236-6010. We're going to be talking to Dr. Jennice Vilhauer about a really interesting new book that she has. We'll do that at the bottom of the hour. If you have questions about health or nutrition, prescription drugs, medications, the longevity products, if you have a success story you'd like to share, or if you just want to say hi and contribute to the conversation, we'll take your calls in our next segment, 844-236-6010. Okay, so last time we spoke, we were talking about the relationship of health and the lack of health to eating behavior. This is all related to the gas transmitters, specifically nitric oxide. Fasting, intermittent fasting, laying off food, upregulates nitric oxide, increases nitric oxide, increases nitric oxide levels. It upregulates hydrogen sulfide, another key player in anti-inflammation. Pretty much all health, any health benefit you can think of can accrue from fasting behavior, from eating less food. I know we live in an empire of food. We are encouraged to eat at every turn. Anytime we're encouraged to do something by the media and by commercials and by marketing interests, red flags should go up. And we are encouraged more than anything else. We're encouraged to eat, 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 eat. Maybe take drugs is the next thing that we're encouraged to. And if you watch TV, every other commercial is for food or for drugs, food or for medication, food or for prescriptions. We are encouraged to eat at every turn, and no surprise, that means we're encouraged to be sick at every turn, because the more we eat, the more calories we ingest, the sicker we get. Alternatively, or conversely, fasting upregulates all the markers of health. Fasting upregulates anti-inflammatory factors. Fasting is anti-aging. Fasting has relaxation properties, improves blood flow, healthier brain, better immune system. In other words, fasting and caloric restriction, eating less calories, improve every single marker of health, especially blood sugar and insulin response, as well as all the symptoms of autoimmunity and the prognosis of autoimmunity. And by the way, fasting improves cancer too. Between cancer and heart disease, you have the two leading causes of death. Between cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, you got the three leading causes of death, and fasting improves the prognosis for all of these leading causes of death and disease. You go on to Google Scholar or scholar.google.com, which I love if you're interested in learning about health or about nutrition or about chemistry. You don't want to just go to straight Google or Yahoo or your regular search engines. Go to scholar.google.com, Google caloric restriction. You'll get zillions, page after page after page after page of articles and studies. Caloric restriction improves aging. Caloric restriction improves gene expression. Caloric restriction delays aging. Caloric restriction promotes cell survival. Caloric restriction delays, I'm just reading this off of scholar.google.com. Caloric restriction delays disease. Caloric restriction improves aging. On and on and on. What do we need to see here? My friend Janine sent me an article on Facebook. Prolonged fasting reduces stem cell-based, reduces IGF-1 to promote stem cell-based regeneration and reverse immunosuppression. And no surprise, eating is a stressful activity in the body. Nobody's saying not to eat, by the way. We're not saying stop eating. We're just saying restrict your calories and practice intermittent fasting. Of all the anti-aging and anti-disease strategies that we can employ, there's nothing, absolutely nothing more powerful than simply eating less. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I can't afford a nutritional supplement program. I'm on a fixed income and fixed budget. Well, guess what? You're going to save money when you practice intermittent fasting. You're going to save money on food when you restrict your calories or limit your calories, in addition to living longer, in addition to reducing the symptoms of inflammation and autoimmunity, et cetera, et cetera. And if caloric restriction is proven, and it has been proven, shown in countless studies to quench inflammation, improve heart health, circulation, slow down aging, why is it such a stretch to believe that if we have ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or we have any kind of inflammatory health issue, arthritis, or an autoimmune disease, why is it such a stretch to believe that we can immediately improve our suffering, immediately improve the prognosis of the disease with something as simple as eating less food? It's not sexy, it's not fancy and magical, it's not some kind of formula that you have to go on the internet and order and put your credit card in and participate in marketing and advertising. It's something we could do ourselves. We could sit on the couch and practice caloric restriction. We can sit on the couch and practice intermittent fasting. We can sit on the couch and eat less food, and every once in a while go a day without food. Harvard study. Dr. Christopher Hine, research fellow at the Department of Genetic and Complex Disease. 1 week of dietary restriction increases antioxidant response and protects mice from damaged livers associated with messed up blood chemistry, ischemia. And all of these benefits resulted from genetic changes. You can change your very genes by practicing intermittent fasting. Caloric restriction and fasting work epigenetically. Caloric restriction and fasting control the genes. That's what epigenetics is about, controlling the genes. Caloric restriction supersedes genetics. Our behaviors can supersede our genes. Caloric restriction turns genes on. Caloric restriction turns genes off too. Caloric restriction overrides our genes. Tell that to the next boneheaded healthcare professional or layperson, neighbor, friend who tells you there's nothing they can do about their ALS or their short lifespan or their diabetes or their cancer because it's in the genes. Okay, I'm Pharmacist Ben. We're coming back, 844-236-6010. If you've got phone calls, if you've got questions, we're taking your phone calls, 844-236-6010. We'll be talking to Dr. Jennice Vilhauer at the bottom of the hour about her new book, Think Forward to Thrive. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We'll be back after this. Okay, I got a note here from Christina. Said she's been trying to get a hold of me. She had her gallbladder removed on November the 4th of 2013 due to chronic issues and 19 years of misdiagnosis. If you've had a gallbladder removed, it becomes extra important, Christina, or anybody, that you focus on your ability to process fats. The gallbladder is a key player in how we absorb fats. As you know, if you've heard this program before, it is not an extra organ. Doctors feel like you don't need a gallbladder. You can live just fine without a gallbladder. Not true. Without a gallbladder, you run higher risks for deficiencies in fatty vitamins, vitamin A, E, D, K, essential fatty acids, plant nutrients, phytonutrients. Accelerated aging is likely. Even cancer is a possibility with a gallbladder removed. Cancer is always a possibility, of course, but you have increased odds of tumor formation and growths and polyps and adenomas, et cetera, without a gallbladder. What do? Number one, you got to focus on how you process fats. That means use your ultimate enzymes. If you're on the longevity products, digestive enzymes featuring something called lipase, L-I-P-A-S-E, make sure that you're using lecithin granules with all of your meals. It's probably a good idea to use some apple cider vinegar and to take some extra bile salts, which you can get as a supplement. You'll find some, of course, in the ultimate enzymes from longevity. Probiotics, good bacteria, are very important for helping process fats. In fact, that's one of the most important roles for good bacteria in the gut. And it's one of the roles that you don't hear about a lot when it comes to these probiotics and good bacteria in the gut. They help our body process fats. They help our body process fatty hormones as well. So if you have liver issues or estrogen issues or progesterone issues or PMS issues, all of these are great reasons to take probiotics, as well as if you've had a gallbladder removed. And then, of course, you want to make absolutely sure you're getting your fatty vitamins in a supplemental form if you have a gallbladder removed. That means 20,000 IU of vitamin A a day, 400 IU of vitamin E a day, preferably in the mixed form, mixed tocopherols and mixed tocotrienols. It's probably a good idea to get on some vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 maybe 5,000, anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 micrograms a day, and then getting some sunshine, as well as supplemental vitamin D in your omega-3 or fish oil. And of course, essential fatty acids are also going to be important. Without a gallbladder, you run higher risks for all fat malabsorption issues. And speaking of fat malabsorption issues, got another note here from Alfred, who wants to know about cheilitis, which is kind of a peeling, painful lip condition. He says that he's heard me talk extensively on vitamin A and C. Yes, indeed, vitamin A and C are very important. In fact, one of the signs of vitamin A deficiency is peeling lips. 20,000 IU of vitamin A a day. Vitamin A is easy to supplement with, and it's really cheap. All dry skin and peeling skin issues, whether it's on the lips or anywhere else, need to be regarded as a fat issue first and foremost. The skin is very responsive to fat and fatty vitamins. Now, topically, I wouldn't be using any Blistex or Carmex or Vaseline or waxy stuff on my lips, because when you use these kinds of products on your lips will slow down or down-regulate their production of moisture factors, and you can end up with a worse problem than before you started. This is one of the issues I have, one of the big problems I have with moisturizers in general. The more moisturizer you use on your skin, the less likely your skin is going to be to produce its own moisture factors. The drier your skin will ultimately be, and the more moisturizer you're going to use. How do you like that? The more moisturizer you use, the drier your skin is. The more lip protective products you use, the drier your lips get. Always regard dry skin, peeling skin, sore, painful lips as a sign of nutritional deficiency, either getting the nutrients or absorbing the nutrients. So making sure you're taking your fat-soluble nutrients as well as helping your body absorb those fat-soluble nutrients. Okay, got a couple minutes here before we get to our guest, 844-236-6010 if you want to get on board. If not, we'll just continue talking here about caloric restriction. If you're in the Minnesota area or Minneapolis area, by the way, go check Dr. Wallach out Wednesday, January 7th and Thursday, January 8th. You can get more information by calling Ted Anderson at 952-221-1108 or Clinton Scott at 763-221-8432. Okay, so if you got any autoimmune disease, if you have any inflammatory health issue, caloric restriction is probably the simplest, easiest, most inexpensive way to improve your symptoms. If you have any degenerative health issue, and that includes ALS. I'm talking about ALS because I've been getting a lot of letters about ALS, and I had a nice long conversation with a friend of mine who's also a listener, probably listening out there, John. Hey, John. And he's been dealing with ALS, and here's the deal. If you have ALS or any autoimmune disease, there's nothing your doctor can do for you, I'm sorry to say. Nothing. The medical model has nothing in its armamentum, nothing in its formulary to reverse or cure degenerative diseases and autoimmune diseases and inflammatory diseases like ALS. If you want some pain relief, they can give you a pain pill maybe, or maybe they can give you a drug that will poison your inflammatory system to shut down the inflammation, but they can't do anything to make your illness better. There's nothing a doctor can do for you if you have ALS or MS or MD, muscular dystrophy or Parkinson's disease or anything else. Doctors will say, we don't know what causes these things. But if we know that we can reduce the symptoms with something as simple as eating less food, clearly our food and eating behavior must have something to do with our symptoms. This is just common sense, you guys. If we know, and this has been shown in study after study after study. You can Google, scholar.google it yourself. If we know that when we restrict our food or we lower our calories or we practice intermittent fasting, our inflammation goes down, what is that saying? Clearly, there's a relationship between eating behaviors and inflammation. Yes, we have a hardwired imperative to eat. But this hardwired imperative to eat is manipulated. It's worked on by marketers who don't care about our health, by people who are making money off of our misery. Our hardwired imperative to eat, built into the brain, is so built in, it's so enmeshed into our neurology, into our brain, in such a fundamental fashion that when you hear these simple ways to improve the quality of our life and our health, when these ideas of caloric restriction and eating less food and intermittent fasting are presented to us and proven to us in dozens of scientific studies, we tend to be resistant. It can't be that easy. It is that easy. It doesn't seem like it's that easy, but it is that easy. Wouldn't it be inspiring to have the ability to control your inflammation? Wouldn't it be inspiring to have the ability to control your pain without having to go to the doctor? Wouldn't you love to be able to control your disease state and to improve your health without having to take a prescription drug? This is what we're talking about here, you guys. We're talking about taking the control of our health back from a medical model that has failed us and that doesn't care. Eating less, reducing energy input into the body is how we calm the body down. And that's really what this is about at the end of the day, calming the body down. Our bodies are in this hyped up, freaked out mode, just like a baby who's scared. And degenerative disease and autoimmunity and cancer, these are all the manifestations of a body that's jacked up, of a body that's hyped up. It's in this hyperactive mode from a metabolic biochemistry sense. It's like the physiologic version of anxiety. By the way, we're going to talk about anxiety tomorrow because this is another important issue and another manifestation of a jacked up, hyped up body. And so anxiety is another way that the hyped-up survival response manifests itself. Last program, we talked to a caller who was experiencing anxiety when he went to work. And I got to thinking, well, anxiety is like a mental version of the physiology of excitement, the physiology of hyperactivity. So anxiety, in a way, is the brain's manifestation of a survival response that shows up as autoimmune disease from a physiologic perspective. We'll talk about that tomorrow on The Bright Side. We're coming back with our guest, Dr. Jennice Vilhauer, and we're going to talk about her new book, Think Forward to Thrive. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back after. Okay, welcome back to The Bright Side, your common sense health and nutrition program. I'm Pharmacist Ben, nutritional pharmacist from Boulder, Colorado. And as you know, if you've listened to this program, one of the things we're dedicated to on The Bright Side is the health of the entire body. Not just the physical body, but the mental body and the emotional body and the spiritual body, too. In addition to the physical dimensions of nutrition, nutritional supplementation, we approach all of these aspects of health, spiritual, mental, and emotional, all of which play a role in how effective and how vital our lives can and will be. So with this in mind, I'm honored to welcome our guest to The Bright Side. She's written a really cool book about well-being that, as one reviewer on the back of the book puts it, it turns psychotherapy on its head. I love that quote. As you may or may not know, psychotherapy is about resolving the past to get to the future. My guest's take on this is a little different, actually a lot different. Her approach is to move to the future without necessarily focusing so much on the past. And even while this may make sense, it may seem logical, it's not how most of us, including myself, tend to live our lives most of the time. Most of us, including me, we have a tendency to bring our past with us into the future, and it would seem that this is one of the reasons why we're condemned to repeating our actions and ultimately repeating the outcomes. Our guest is a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science in the School of Medicine at Emory University in Atlanta. She's the director of the Adult Outpatient Psychotherapy Program and the author of a very interesting book, and easy-to-read book, and helpful book called Think Forward to Thrive, subtitled How to Use the Mind's Power of Anticipation to Transcend, I love that word, transcend your past and transform your life. Please welcome to The Bright Side, Dr. Jennice Vilhauer. What's up, Dr. Vilhauer? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. Love the book. Let's get cut right to the chase. What is future-directed therapy, and how does it, in your opinion, differ from ordinary psychotherapy, the law of attraction, positive thinking, and all the other zillions of self-help strategies and concepts and resources that people have available to them?
That's a very big question. So future-directed therapy is basically, I should say initially it was a treatment that I developed for major depressive disorders. So it came out of work that I was doing with a lot of people who had depression, and I was really noticing that there was a very big difference between people that seemed to be able to get better and those that didn't. And it always seemed that the ones that were getting better were able to focus on a goal, to identify something that they wanted to work towards. And in that process, that's when you would see the symptoms really starting to lift, and you would see them moving towards well-being. So I wanted to really understand what was happening, and I looked into the psychology research and the literature and found that there was a pretty large body of work that had already been sort of research to show that future thinking was incredibly important to well-being, but that none of it had really been sort of pulled together in a sort of step-by-step process. And so that's really what I wanted to do, was to pull these tools together that people had been studying for many years and really offer it as an intervention that people could use on their own.
Now, future thinking, that makes sense. We think about the future. We always have wishes and aspirations and desires about the future, but the problem is we bring the past into the future, correct?
Well, exactly. That the way that most people, when they're not sort of consciously aware of what they're doing, kind of create future experiences, is they tend to project from their past. They tend to anticipate that the future is going to look very much like the past, and as a result, they act according to their expectations, and what that eventually leads to is creating what we call sort of self-fulfilling prophecies. So they're taking actions based on what they expect, which is very different oftentimes than what they want, and then as a result of that, they're sort of recreating past experiences.
Does that kind of sum up the problem, is that our expectations get in the way of our wants and desires?
It's that our expectations are different than our wants and desires. So, one of the sort of simple examples I use to illustrate this concept, when I teach future-directed therapy, which I often teach in a course, is that, I ask people, would you like to win the lottery? And everybody says, well, yes, of course, And then I say, well, when was the last time you bought a lottery ticket? And people kind of look around at each other, and it's like, well, 6 months ago, And when I ask them, why is that, the answer is always the same. It's like, well, we don't expect to win.
Uh-huh.
So it's understanding that, we're taking actions based on our expectations and not what we want in life. And that's, I think, the really kind of important key concept. Because in that example, the expectation, is sort of accurate. Most people really don't win the lottery. But a lot of times in life, things that we want, that we really do have control over, that we really can create for ourselves, are still things that we don't expect to get in life. So, for example, if you want to have a new relationship, a good relationship, and your past history is, you've had several failed relationships, oftentimes, you're expecting the next one to go in a similar way. So your actions, might be based, instead of, working hard on the relationship, your expectation is, well, it's not going to work out anyway, so why bother? So maybe you kind of bail at the first sign of something going wrong, as opposed to, really, trying to make it work. So you can see how what we expect, again, then creates the experience itself.
Can we change expectations artificially? Can we really convince ourselves that we expect something different? Or is expectations just something that's built into our way of thinking?
Well, that's a large part of the process in future-directed therapy, is really teaching people how to begin to change their expectations, because their expectations are really based on experience. But what we also know is that oftentimes when people are sort of thinking about a certain event in their future that they want, they're selectively pulling from things that have happened in the past, as opposed to sort of the whole picture. So oftentimes they have this sort of selective filter around the negative experiences, and that's really what they're seeing, as opposed to, the whole picture. So for most people, even if they've had several past failed relationships, they've also had successes during those relationships. There are things that they have done right, things that have gone well for them. And so it's really starting with the process of getting them to see that there are things that, have gone well in their life, and to start pulling from those experiences, and then to sort of begin to, in a very step-by-step sort of way, start to act on experience, on things that they want in their life, where they can achieve some successes, but they do it in a small way so that they get to build their confidence. And in that process, they begin to shift the expectation itself. So it's understanding that, our expectations in life are oftentimes not necessarily based on the reality of the things that have happened, but really are sort of selectively being pulled from some negative experiences that we've had in our past.
So they're based on reality, but it's a reality that we select, and we can select other reality. So we can select whatever we want.
It's a distorted reality, yes.
So do you think... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you. It's a distorted reality that, in fact, is oftentimes sort of pulled out. For some reason, we have this tendency to really hyper-focus on negative experiences in our past, as opposed to, the whole picture. And once you're sort of consciously aware that you're doing that, one of the exercises that we do is really get people to actively focus on the positive things that have happened to them. And for most people, there are some there. There are things that have gone well for them.
Dr. Vilhauer, hang on to that thought. We got to take a break, okay? We'll continue when we come back. We're talking to Dr. Jennice Vilhauer. Her book is Think Forward to Thrive. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We'll be back after this. Okay, we are back on the bright side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We're talking to Jennice Vilhauer, Dr. Jennice Vilhauer, about her book, Think Forward to Thrive. Hey, Dr. Vilhauer. So, you there, ma'am?
Yes.
There, Doc?
Yes.
Okay, good. So a lot of what you're talking about kind of hinges on the ability to control our thoughts, correct?
Well, the ability to be aware of your thoughts and to consciously be able to sort of redirect thinking. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you seem to be making a distinction between redirecting and controlling. Is that right?
Well, I would say that they're probably the same thing. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So there's an element to your theory here. There's an element of controlling thought. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is that right? that our thoughts have a certain power, and the ability to direct them, as you say, or as I'm saying, control them, impacts how effective we're going to be when it comes to thinking forward as opposed to thinking in the past. And my question to you is, isn't the survival imperative, the need to protect ourselves, doesn't that always trump the desire to thrive or the desire to be better?
Well, I think that we oftentimes want to protect ourselves from, negative things happening in the future if they have happened to us in the past. But I think it's really important that people begin to have this conscious awareness that nothing in the future has happened yet, and that, if some of the fear is coming from this lack of awareness of understanding why things have gone a certain way for them in the past, knowing that they can do something different, knowing that, that there is a process by which they can successfully create future experiences for themselves. So a lot of the fear is about not knowing how to do it differently.
So in other words, just knowing that there's a possibility that you can think differently, that you have there is an aspect of control that you have over how things develop. Just knowing that is powerful. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I've seen be so transformative for people, is that as they're beginning to learn this material and they start to see, how it all works, and the light bulbs start to go off in their head, they get really excited. They lose the fear. They start to see, wow, there's not as much to be afraid of as they sort of thought in the first place. They don't have to continue to recreate past experiences. There is, a process by which they can begin to make changes that is very effective, and it's not as difficult as, people imagine it to be.
Okay, one of the most powerful ideas, I think, when it comes to what I'm, for lack of a better term, self-help or achieving what you want to achieve, one of the most powerful ideas, for better or worse, is the idea that we have a limited attention span, that we can only think one thought at a time. Tell me how you have a chapter called The Value of Your Thoughts where you kind of address this a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how this, for better or worse, aspect of our thinking behavior, that we can only think one thought at a time, how does that play into what you're talking about, thinking forward to thrive?
Well, I think attention regulation, which is what you're talking about, is something that is highly underutilized in the field of psychology, and it's so, so important that our attention creates our experience. So because we can only sort of think one thought at a time, whatever it is that we're focused on is what is eliciting an emotional response. And so, people oftentimes think that in order to heal negative emotions in their life, they have to sort of look backward and find all the reasons for why those problems exist and sort of dig through it. And the reality is that you can only experience a negative emotion if you're focused on something that is, generating that negative emotion. Most people can make themselves cry in under 5 minutes by simply pulling up a really sad memory from their life. And it's recognizing that you don't have to do that, that in fact you can sort of focus on things that elicit positive emotion. And what that does is it generates a certain set of chemicals in the brain that then continue to perpetuate themselves and have a lot of sort of positive impact, on the brain, and actually open up the creative problem-solving process of the mind, which is what we, need in order to be able to create future experiences for ourselves. So it's recognizing that, what we pay attention to is determining our emotional experience, and that we have control over what we pay attention to.
So what you're saying kind of is that you can only experience the past in the present, right?
You can only, right. So the present is the only place that we exist. It's the only place that we can experience any emotion. What we give our attention to in the present moment is what's going to produce, any sort of emotion for us. So recognizing that,
there's really no past in this way. But based on what you're saying, there's really no past, right? It's all present.
It's all present. I wouldn't say the past, I wouldn't go so far as to say the past hasn't existed. It's that we don't have to kind of continue to bring it forward with us. We don't have to continue to direct our attention to it. And the only way that we can, relive the past is to direct our attention to it. And that's something we don't have to do.
That's huge. That is so huge, Doc. That puts psychotherapy out of business, correct? I mean, the path, basically,
well,
it seems like.
My own view is that, about psychotherapy, whether we're learning about, ourselves in the past, the present, or the future, is that it's all about learning. It's all about, understanding how our brain works, what we can do differently, how to begin to shift things. And so, I wouldn't say psychotherapy is out of business. I would just say that, learning how to, direct our sort of attention is a very powerful part of the process that people learn in psychotherapy.
Okay, we got a couple minutes here. Let's get to tips for thriving. You have an acronym you call SMART, S-M-A-R-T. Tell us a little bit about that.
So SMART is a acronym that has been used actually by many people in the field of sort of goal setting, and it really just talks about, how to break down a goal in a very effective way. So, the S stands for, specific, so it's about, really learning how to sort of be more specific about what you're thinking of. The M stands for measurable. The A stands for, attainable. The R stands for relevant. Is this relevant to, your value system? And the T stands for, a time frame, so creating a time frame around it. And we know from the research that this is a very effective way to begin to create a goal and to think about our goals. And it's very different from how the average person creates goals. Most of the time, people create goals in this sort of very vague way, and then they wonder why it's so difficult to achieve, because they're sort of missing a lot of these, components of, the sort of SMART acronym that really begins to help define it, clarify it in your mind. And as you're more defined and clarified, your brain starts to work on helping you to achieve it. So as it's, very clear in your mind what it is you're trying to achieve, you now activate this problem-solving part of the brain called the executive network, which begins to generate ideas for how to help you achieve your goal.
How does visualization fit into this whole picture? When we talk about clarity, I'm thinking that you got to have a sort of clear vision. And when I think of visualization, I think of pictures. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Visualization. So one of the things with SMART is it forces you, as you're being specific, to create a visual image in your mind. And one of the things that we know is helpful in achieving goals is to be able to visualize things. More specifically, really being able to visualize the entire process of achieving your goal is what the research shows to be effective. Sometimes people talk about, sort of visualizing just the outcome or what it would feel like once you achieve it. We know that by itself is not necessarily effective, and in some instances can actually be self-destructive to a goal. But what we know that works really, really well is being able to visualize yourself, going through the entire process, achieving sort of each step, getting over the obstacles, really working yourself through it, and that visualization is something that's been used in many different fields for a long time. Sports psychology uses it all the time to help athletes achieve, higher performance levels. So it's something that is very, very effective.
Where does journaling or writing come in?
Journaling can be very effective. I like to get people to journal about the process of what we call what can go right as opposed to what can go wrong. Because a lot of times when people are thinking of their future, they're oftentimes focusing on all of the things that can go wrong. And what journaling does is it's drawing more attention to something specific. So as we talked about earlier, this process of attention, there's many ways that you can direct your attention. Journaling is a way you can do it, via the process of writing. As you're writing, you're focused on, whatever it is that you're writing about. So it's about giving people topics that are going to direct their attention in a way.
So it all comes down to focus and attention, what you're putting in on this limited stage that we have, what we're putting on this limited stage in terms of our attention. Dr. Vilhauer, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. The book is Think Forward to Thrive. Good luck with everything, Doc. I think you're doing great work. Appreciate it very much. Take care.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it.
God bless. Have a beautiful day. Okay, the book is Think Forward to Thrive. You can get it off Amazon. You can get it at any bookstore. Dr. Jennice Vilhauer, thank you so much for joining us on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Tomorrow we'll continue talking about nitric oxide, and we'll talk a little bit about anxiety issues and how that all works in, how that all plays in together. That's all the time we have for today. Have a wonderful day.